What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's TV review of the Netflix original series, Terminator Zero. This is, of course, based on the James Cameron franchise and is showrun by, of course, Mattson Tomlin. Okay, guys, this will be spoiler-free in the sense of major developments that happen in this series, but the overarching of what the series is about will be told. So if you don't want know anything about it, just definitely not watch this video, but just make you aware it's going to be kind of spoiler-free, but may have what you consider spoilers. So Terminator Zero is the newest iteration, newest canon point for the Terminator franchise started by James Cameron. It is animated, of course, by Production IG, who is known for doing stuff like, Ghost in the Shell, a lot of animated cutscenes for some famous games like Persona, and in essence tells the story of a character named Malcolm Lee, who has created this AI, artificial intelligence, that basically is trying to compete with Skynet, who, of course, is the company or the development program that basically destroyed the world. And he's trying to do that because he's having visions, having nightmares about this situation, about what Skynet could do. Well, this story takes place in 1997, which is a focal point or a main point for the Terminator franchise. And so, as most Terminator movies or shows do, they send a Terminator back in time, they send a lone warrior back in time, and the Terminator has a goal of taking down people like Malcolm Lee and his family. And so in the process of everything, with this new AI system, Kokoro, is developed as a way to stop Skynet in a lot of respects. Why that is, we're not entirely sure. But we have a lot of interesting characters in here. We have Aiko, who is the soldier sent back. We, of course, have the Terminator, who's voiced by Timothy Olyphant. We, of course, have, a bunch of other people, just a bunch of his kids. We have a woman who's taking care of the kids. And then we have these robots that are mixed in as well. That are part of, like, this kind of, if you've ever seen iRobot, they're those helper robots in a lot of respects. But this is a world that knows exactly what happened in Terminator 2, Terminator Genesis, and all these Terminator films. So there is references, there is knowledge from the government about what the Terminator franchise is. And so this is a new way of telling the story in a much more animated style fashion. It also takes place over in Japan. It also, deals with stuff that you've always had questions in the Terminator franchise, and is basically a continuation of the franchise. That's what it is, exactly what it is. It deals with new characters. It deals with the interesting storylines about, looking into the world of the Terminator franchise, including the Earth in the future, as well as the past. And that's pretty much the premise of this franchise, or this series, or this new animated spinoff, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so I am a huge proponent of the first three Terminator movies. I really do like Rise of the Machines. It has its problems. It goes in goofy places. But I think the ending to that movie was one of the most unsettling things I've ever seen. And I think it's a misguided, misfire, but I think it's a fun, entertaining film. You can't say the same about the other three films. I know people really like Dark Fate. I know that people like, the one that McG directed, the one that's actually set in the future. But I think the three films have done a really nice job. And then the Sarah Connor Chronicles was a very underappreciated franchise film or show. I think it did a really nice job. I think those two seasons were really well put together, some of the best work of the franchise. But it's safe to say that this franchise really hasn't had any momentum or any passion or drive since the first two films that James Cameron directed. So when this was announced, I was intrigued. When it was, of course, the first trailer popped up, I was interested because though I'm not a huge fan of anime, I like when they take properties like this and kind of put a new spin on it. And then you bring in Mattson Tomlin, who is known for doing script rewrites on stuff like The Batman. And I guess he's working on The Batman 2. He also did Mother Android, which, take it for what's worth, this might not be the greatest. But he's a guy that looks like he was putting a lot of effort into the series. And then you have Project IG, like I said, that has come along to shepherd the animated style of this. And if you've ever seen Ghost in the Shell or Second World Wars or Persona, you know that this group has a particular purpose and how they animate stuff. So though I wasn't a huge fan of the like cyberpunk animated stuff because of Studio Trigger and their kind of insanity that they do, this looked like it was going to be on more of my level. So thanks to Netflix for sending me this early. so that I could watch this before the embargo lifted. And for my honest take of this 8-part series, I'm thinking there might be a second season. I'm not entirely sure. Let's just say this is the only season. I think this is the third best entry. Well, maybe the fourth best entry, depending on how you want to look at it, because of Sarah Connor Chronicles, of this entire franchise. This is a series that really approaches the Terminator franchise with a lot of heart, a lot of passion. It goes in the territory which we've always wondered about, with the idea of the time travel, with the idea of what the Terminators are and who they are, with the idea of like what would happen if another competing company were trying to do the same thing but better and safer. And it really answers a lot of questions and really goes into a lot of deep details about how messy this franchise has been and how it's trying to right that situation. I think there's a lot of depth with a lot of these characters. I think that, I think it's Aiko and then Misaki who are the main female antagonists in the series. So Aiko is, of course, the rebel who comes from the future. I think they put a lot of effort into making these really deep characters, and I think it's always been a strong thing that the Terminator franchise has leaned on very strong females. And I think what the studio, what Mattson, Tomlin, and what the writers and director have done is created some really interesting action heroines. I think Misaki has a really interesting character arc. I think it's one of the most fun in the story. I think Aiko is a character that really tries to be that, Michael Biehn style soldier. It might not be the strongest character, but it's fun to watch. It's very, it is very somber and unfortunately dark. But that's because of what the Terminator franchise is. It's not the most, uplifting series of all time. It's about robots being sent to the past to kill people. It is what it is, and you have to have that soldier that protects them. I think they're really well-rounded characters. I think they have some interesting arcs. I think they have some interesting twists and turns. And I think it's stuff that really helps the series do a really nice job of just giving us really fascinating characters. I think some of the kids in the series, there's 3 kids who are the offspring of course, Malcolm Lee's character. I think one thing that really is a problem when it comes to animated series, and I see this sometimes, even though I know a lot of people like Miyazaki kids and stuff like that, but there's a level of difficulty on animated and portraying kids that really feels unnatural sometimes. And I think the kids in here have a lot of heavy lifting to do, and I think they do a nice job. But they get annoying, to be fairly honest, and it's just because of who they are and what they are trying to portray. I mean, you're having 3 kids who are thrust into this situation that is really dangerous and dark, and they put them in some really deep and dark and disturbing things, and it not necessarily works all the time, but it's not necessarily the worst thing I've ever seen. It just, I think kids in animated films are really a struggle sometimes to make them feel like holy characters and stuff like that. But I think some like the younger, the oldest son goes into some really dark places that has some interesting ideas. I think the youngest kid has some really interesting stories. He has this robotic cat that plays a really integral part to the story. And then there's the middle kid who really gets the short shrift of the entire things, but it's fine for what it is. And then of course you have like Kokoro, who is the AI robotic system that Malcolm Lee is working on, and there is some really interesting things that this story is talking about with AI and how AI is a very unpredictable thing with what it wants to do. It has a lot of questions. It's machine learning. It's definitely a different form of Skynet in a lot of respects. When you boil it down, I'm not spoiling anything, but it is a different form of Skynet. Like just in the nature of like when it starts asking questions to Malcolm Lee about human nature, you really start getting into the nuts and bolts on why human psychology and psychosis and the human mind is such a complex machine. And when you try to boil it down, it becomes so difficult to understand and so difficult to penetrate and perform that we see it today. We see it when like AI tries to generate a video or a picture. It doesn't understand what the human brain understands. And so therefore, though this focuses a lot on AI more than the Terminators themselves, it's still dealing with the same scenario that the Terminators themselves are dealing with themselves, which that's a lot of themselves, is the simple fact that the machine is a one-minded thing that is based off zeros and ones, and though it can move around, though it can kill, though it can do all these things, it will never have the heart and the soul and the matter that the Terminator, that the human being has. But it also shows the sides of like how, coarse and how, fly by the seat of our pants and gun-toting we truly are when it comes to what we do. We are unpredictable in the nature of, responding to incidences and stuff like that. So we might fly off the handle for no reason. And it's a nice back and forth between the two sides, trying to understand that the human side will always be very destructive, but the AI computer side will never understand the true complexity of the human brain. That's what this series is doing, and what the franchise has always done is delves deep into how AI can truly, or how machine learning can truly misguide itself into believing that what we are and who we are not exactly what it thinks it is. And it's always been an interesting thing. It's always been a series about control, a series about misunderstandings, a series about the fate which what we make it, that type of thing. And it's always been a very interesting, though it's never been fully explored even in the movies, even in the James Cameron movies. But there is a level of like, is the thing we're doing, is it the right thing? Is the thing that the machines are doing, is that the right thing? And is controlling one side or the other the truly understandable thing? And you see that in like the Matrix, you see that in iRobot, just how we operate as a culture and stuff like that. So that's kind of what this series does as well. And then, like I said, Malcolm Lee, who's played by André Holland, or voiced by André Holland, is a character that sees, once again, he's having dreams about the nukes going off and the cities being destroyed. It's like building the bombs for the United States with Robert Oppenheimer or something like that. It's, you do this to protect the country, but what is it that you're doing to protect the country? Is it you're creating ultimate evil? Is it you're creating something that could outpace us? There's a lot of implications to what Malcolm Lee is having to deal with, and what Kokoro is having to explain to him, and what choices he has to make. And like I said, I'm trying not to get any spoilers, but you can kind of see where it's heading as the series moves along. It's not going to go places that you want it to go or should go, but it is a lesson in, are we doing the things for the right purpose, but is it something that's a necessary evil? It's a really fascinating thing. That's why I love what the series questions and arcs on the different things that have been proposed in the Terminator franchise. On top of everything, it answers questions. It actually goes into deep detail with certain characters that may pop up in like one episode about the ideas of what this franchise is doing, like with the time travel stuff, and like what's the purpose behind that, and how does that affect everything. There's very much an angle to another movie that has the same kind of ideology that, I don't want to spoil, but when they start getting into the details of like what exactly this whole scenario and how does it occupy everything and what is the purpose of it, it's a pretty impressive thing. And I really appreciate that they're willing to go into detail. Yes, they had eight episodes, but even the Sarah Connor Chronicles, I don't think it even went this deep into detail. This is one of those where it's definitely answering questions that you've always had about things that may not just be part of the series. It's just in general, it really does a nice job. And the animation style is really good. It takes a couple episodes to get going, but I think when it does, and I think episode 3, it doesn't stop. I think the Terminator has a really interesting purpose, does some really interesting stuff, and is voiced nicely by Timothy Olyphant. And I think in the end, to kind of conclude this review, I think this is a worthy successor to this franchise. I think it does a nice job. It may not be everything that you want out of the Terminator franchise, but I think what it does pretty well. I think it goes in new directions that have a really nice feel to it. I think once again, it's animated very, very nice. It's actually, violent for, it's what anime does sometimes with its R-rated content. Here, it's more traditional anime in the style of like Ghost in the Shell and stuff like that. So overall, I highly recommend this. Is like a 9.5 out of 10. It has some issues, with just kind of the nature of the Terminator franchise as it is, is what it is. But I think overall, it's a really fantastic, really thought-provoking series that does a nice job with the Terminator series, and definitely is way better than the last 3 movies. So, yeah. That's going to be my take on Terminator Zero now on Netflix. So there you go. So anyways, with that said, thank you so much for watching. Comments below if you've seen this series, or if you've watched it or have not watched it. Are you looking forward to it? What was your things that you liked about it? All that good stuff. But let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, awesome. Hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out, guys.